you.
You're welcome.
All right. Let me get our welcome back, everyone, and just those of you who are joining us for the first time. Tonight, maybe you caught up on the video. I'm Jerusalem Greer, staff officer for Evangelism, for the presiding bishop, for the Episcopal Church, and for you. I'm so glad to be with y'all this week. I think Tom was asking me, I forgot to tell y'all last week about my name and how I got my name. You know, when I was on the road, I had like this regular shtick that I did like to get things started, and being on Zoom is just throwing everything to the wind. So I forget to do that. But my parents are Christian hippies. It was the 70s. What can you say about that? And my dad, but my parents are from the South, and my father's name was Johnny Joe Jackson Jr. So, yeah, there are 4 J's. And my mom wanted all of our names to start with J, and to be from the Bible. But again, the hippie factor. So I was the first. So I'm Jerusalem. And then I have a brother named Joshua, which is the most normal name, but he's the most hippie-like of all of us, which is funny. And then my sisters are Jemima and Judea. And Jemima is in the Bible. It's in Job. So now you can win Bible trivia if you didn't know that. Nobody ever knows that. I've asked rooms full of bishops that. No one ever knows. So now you know. And I have 2 sons, Wiley and Miles. They're now 20 and 16. But they call her Aunt Jemima. They always have. So they don't know any different. And they were really shocked to find out that there was syrup and baking products. You know, now that all that's going to be different now, but anyway, they have an actual Aunt Jemima. So anyway, it's good to be back with y'all tonight. Excited about getting started and really diving into some fun stuff, especially in the details about, okay, so we want to make people feel like they belong. We want to welcome them and help them get connected. So we dug into a lot of the why last week, and you can go back and watch that for a refresher if you need to. But this week we're going to talk about the what and a lot about the how. So we're just going to jump right in, and here we go with the sharing of the screen, the starting of the slideshow. Okay, welcome and belonging. That's where you're supposed to be. You're in the right place. And so now I'm going to ask Michael. We're going to do what we did last week, which is we're just going to read a short passage of scripture. This one comes out of the Voice translation because I just think it's a really fun translation to hear something different from. And as Michael reads, if you will just listen for the word or phrase that really jumps out at you, that sticks with you, and just type that in the chat or make a note for yourself as we just enter into this space. So if you need to get comfortable, get rooted, any distractions to put away, close your eyes, or find a point to concentrate on while Michael reads for us, and we'll get started with some scripture. Michael, when you're ready.
Because the Eternal's territory is his people, and Jacob is the territory of God's inheritance, the Eternal found Jacob out in the wilderness, out in an empty, wind-swept desert wasteland. He put his arms around him and took care of him. He protected him as the apple of his eye. Just as an eagle stirs up its nest, encouraging its young to fly, and then hovers over them in case they need help, and spreads its wings and catches them if they fall, and carries them up high on its wings. So the Eternal guided Jacob through the wilderness, without the help of any foreign god.
Great. So we'll leave this up just for a moment for you to continue to reflect on what word or phrase jumped out at you. The Eternal, arms around, apple of his eye, guided through wilderness, encouraging its young, put his arms around him and took care of him, stirs, territory is his people. without the help of any foreign god, in case they need help, catches them, eagle's wings, out in an empty, through the wilderness, took care. The Eternal's territory is his people, encouraging. Yeah. I think y'all are hearing a lot of the things that stood out to me when I read the scripture. There's this lovely quote from Henry Nouwen that says, hospitality means primarily the creation of free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom, not disturbed by dividing lines. I'll be making all my slides available after tonight, so don't feel like you have to type furiously if you see something you like. I love this picture of hospitality, and I think that this passage of scripture also shows hospitality in the same, in similar manners. And I think what y'all saw in this, that God took care of Jacob, and that the Eternal's territory is his people, is her people, the language of your heart that you need to hear that in. God's people are God's territory. Like, this is the deal. People are the deal, right? Like, our buildings are great, our programs are great, our books are great, our liturgies are beautiful. Our fair linens are ancient and have been handed down and ironed by generations and carry stories within them. But ultimately, people are the point. God's territory is God's people. And God takes care of them and carries them and guides them through wilderness. And I think we can all admit that we've been in the wilderness a lot of 2020. Maybe we still feel like we are. Maybe it feels like the wilderness is ahead as we navigate what comes next. So what does hospitality, what does welcoming and belonging, and what does the creation of free space where someone can enter and become a friend, where someone can come in and be changed, not being forced to be changed, but they just experience something that invites and allows them to change. How can we offer that if people are the point? So tonight we're going to look at some of these ideas. Last week we really talked about the why, and just a reminder that everyone's wanted. Everyone wants to be wanted. Everyone is wanted by God, and everyone is loved by God. And do they know this? Like, that's our greatest. Like, do they know that? And if not, can we offer that? So that's the why. The what is digital hospitality, is what we're talking about this week and last week. And digital hospitality, not to change people, but to offer that space where change can occur. And some of the ways that the church uniquely is positioned as the Jesus movement to offer this change is by offering belonging, transformation, and liberation. Those are some of the unique ways that we have something different than Rotary clubs, right? And soccer teams. And some of these things, people can find belonging, or they can find one or two of these things. But really, Jesus is where we find all of these things. And we're the conduits for that, right? So then the how. We're going to get into the how tonight. So this kind of running joke that I love Martha Stewart, because I just do, and I love Crafts for Jesus, and all of that. And there's this great meme of her saying, "But you have to do things," that I use a lot, because we can have all these ideas, and these great whys and the great what, but if we don't do some things, it never moves past just kind of being head knowledge. into the actual world. So let's dive in. What we're going to look at tonight is things like making the ask, digital greeters, follow-up plans, and community building. Making the ask. The first thing when you decide to do this work, some of the work, especially some of the things we talk about tonight, the first thing, the nerve-wracking thing to do is to ask your people to join with you in the work. Digital ministry, welcoming and belonging is not solely the rector's job or the deacon's job or the formation minister's job or the parish administrator. It's not one person's job. It's everybody's job. It's the entire body of Christ's job to welcome and make other people feel like they belong. But a lot of our people don't know that. They don't know how to do that. They're not, they haven't practiced. They're not trained. Maybe they don't know that it's part of their baptismal covenant to proclaim the good news of God in Christ through word and deed. And that includes text messages and emails. Those are all the ways we can share words. So the first thing to do is to really begin to think about how you can ask your members to send personal invitations by phone, text, or email, inviting friends and family to participate in your online services or attend online coffee hours, Bible studies, etc. That just putting, sharing things on Facebook is awesome and great and sharing, but actually sending a personal message to say, would you come with me? One thing you can do is you can create a template invitation or an example. You can, do an actual template with like blanks, or you can just do an example that you put in your newsletter or you send to people and say, you can use this language if it's helpful to you. But give them a template, an example for what you're asking for. So here's one right here. Hi, that you could give to your people as an example of the kind of message or the template they could use to invite people. Hi, Sarah. I wanted to see if you would like to go to church with me online this Sunday. Even though we can't sit next to each other in person, we can still participate together from the comfort of our couches. And we could even have lunch together online afterwards if you would like. The service starts at 10 a.m. on Sunday. You can register, join online here, insert link, right? So however your service is. Spell check here. Let me know if you think you can make it and I'll be looking for you. All the best. So, just giving some simple language can really help people begin to take ownership of the invitation. But we know that personal invitation above anything else works 100% better, because it goes back to that idea that people want to be wanted and they want to be invited, like that story of me getting invited to that college mixer. There was probably a poster for that college mixer up in my dorm. If I had just read that, being new and being shy and being unfamiliar, well, not shy, but shy, I wouldn't have gone if I had just seen the flyer. But because someone personally invited me, I went, and it changed my life. So providing those sorts of tools can be helpful. If your events are on Facebook, whether you have a Zoom that you then show live through Facebook, or whether you just stream straight to Facebook, however you're doing it, if you're on Facebook, ask your members to host watch parties during the event. And the way, Facebook keeps changing things. So I did a couple of screenshots of how this works. So and you could use this, do a little tutorial with your people about how to host watch parties. So what you do is instead of typing a post, where you would go to type a post, there's a little button that says add to your post, and you can choose from all these things. So what you would choose is watch party. When you click watch party, this thing comes up that says add videos. So because what they've done is they've made it so that you can host a watch party for something that's already been recorded. It doesn't just have to be live events. So it's going to suggest things for you because Facebook likes to know your business and they like to try to get you to click on things. So you don't necessarily want that one. Watched is going to be things you've already watched. You can reshare them. Live is going to be anything that's happening currently. So what you would do then is you would just show your people that if you were happening live, they could go to live and they could probably see it. Most likely just type in the name of your church right there in the search for videos, and what's live will come up. Also, what you've already recorded will come up. So this is a easy way for people to begin to share and host watch parties of your services and of other events. It can also be Bible studies or evening prayer or your Blue Christmas service or your Christmas Eve digital pageant. You can also do this for things streaming from the Episcopal Church or any other group. So let's say you want everyone to watch together the presiding bishop's Christmas message. So that's a video that lives that anybody in your church can host a watch party for and invite their friends to watch. Because once you're in the live video, you can invite people to be watching with you. And it just sends an automatic alert to your friends. Hey, Cindy's watching this video. She wants you to watch with her. You'd be amazed at how many people will click on those. And come join you in your party and watch the event with you. So for instance, you could invite your people that we're going to have a watch party of lessons and carols from Washington National Cathedral at 5 p.m. on Thursday. And everybody, here's how you do it. Host a watch party and invite 5 people to watch with you. And so it's a real low-hanging fruit way. You don't have to produce anything. You use content that's already out there on Facebook. And it's a great way to invite people into, especially if they're not comfortable going to a church service, but they would love to listen to music or watch a video or something like that. It's a great low-hanging fruit way of inviting people. So that is one idea there. Everyone can invite or welcome someone. I think this is something we don't have to be experts in invitation. Anybody can invite or welcome someone. And that's just an important thing to remember, to remind your people. You can invite somebody, and a lot of times you'll be surprised who is waiting to be invited and who will show up. My very Baptist mother will come to, and I know it's partially because I'm her daughter, but also because, like, for instance, she loves the presiding bishop. So she will come to almost anything that I'm hosting a watch party for, and I invite her to. And this has been really beautiful because it's opened up some common language and some conversation for us that because we've had a shared experience of watching something like we can talk about a sermon or a song. She came to the Diocese of Central Gulf Coast Digital Revival last weekend that maybe we wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. So, and I'm not trying to, convert her, but it's wonderful to have that thing. So everyone can invite or welcome someone. No one's too old or too young or too educated or not educated enough or too introverted or too extroverted. Everyone can do this. Okay, so another thing to ask for, besides just asking your people to do the inviting, is to also ask them to maybe volunteer for what we call the digital greeter role. I think Invite, Welcome, Connect calls these maybe digital ushers or online ushers. So this is a really great way to make people feel welcome during your online services in a really personal way. So a digital greeter is a volunteer. The digital greeter really should not be the clergy. It can be staff, but it probably shouldn't be. It probably should be members of the church, of the community, who can do the following things during your streaming service: welcome, assist, connect, and salutations. And we're going to walk through this a little bit. And so just like you would have a greeter on Sunday morning or usher or someone doing double duty, the same things need to be done online. Just how we talked about your website signage needs to be as good as your in-person signage. The same is true of your greeters. So this is a digital greeter profile. If you were going to put a want ad for a digital greeter, these are the sorts of things you would be looking for. The digital greeters need to be present for services/events in real time. Even if the service is pre-recorded, the engagement of the digital greeter should be live. There is this funny, well, the study itself wasn't funny, but I find the results funny. There was a study done with cows in Belgium. I'll always bring farm animals into this if I can. So there's a study done with cows in Belgium, and they found that the cows were more happy, they produced better milk, their bodies relaxed, their heart rates went to a really healthy place if they heard a live person speaking versus a recorded person speaking. So they would play recordings of the same voices, saying the same things, and play them for them versus having the person like speaking them to the cow live. I don't know all the ins and outs. It was on NPR. We can find this. But what they found is that the cows were just happier when there were live people. So the same is true with our digital greeters. Do you know how, like, if you go to a website or a Facebook page, like a professional, and that little thing, that little chat box pops up and is like, can I help you? And you know, it's not a person. It's a computer program with like an emoji of a person. And you know that if you start to engage with that, you're gonna get canned answers for right? Like, it's not real. And so I'm not even gonna engage with it half the time. Or if you just have to, you do, right? Like, fine, I'll put in my question. It's just whatever. People can tell the difference. And so having a real person interacting in your chat or your comment section of your service makes a huge difference. They need to have access to your chat box or your comment sections for the service. So for Facebook, if they can use the church's Facebook account, great. If not, they can just introduce themselves. We had several greeters for the National Prayer Service that we had on November 1st. And we gave people temporary access for that night only. We made and let them do it. And then we immediately went in and took them out. And on the back end, you can see who has answered what. And so if we had any questions, we could tell who had left a comment because Facebook will do that. The other thing is you can just ask people to be greeters and have them introduce themselves like this. Like, hi, everyone, I'm Betsy. Today, I'm the digital greeter for St. Amelia's. If you have any questions about our service or our church, I'm here to help. And that just identifies them early in the chat, in the comment section, that that's what they are there for. So your greeter needs to be present, needs to be able to have access to the chat or comment section, chat if you're in Zoom, comments if you're on Facebook. And then they need to have access to links of resources that they will need to share throughout the service. For instance, the bulletin. So one of my big pet peeves is that I visit a lot of different churches across Zoom and Facebook, across the church, and just hop in on my friends. And one of the things that is frustrating to me as a visitor is when they say, now, if you'll open your bulletin when you were sent in this week's newsletter, or you should have received by email on Thursday. I don't get that church's newsletter. I'm a visitor, right? So a lot of people at this point have figured this out, but making sure that links to the bulletin, links to anything you talk about in your announcement are put in the chat or in the comments so that people have instant access to those things. So your digital greeter would be doing that. So they'd be, hi everyone, here's the bulletin for today. If you haven't signed up for an email yet, here's the link to the bulletin. If you want to know more about our Epiphany gathering, here's a link to where you register for that. Oh, I know you just heard so-and-so talk about this. Here's this, right? So the digital greeter throughout the service is engaging and sharing all those links, all those resources that are mentioned. And it's just super helpful for, especially for visitors, to not feel excluded and like they don't have what they need to enter into worship. Other digital greeter tips. 1 digital greeter is good, 2 is better. Sometimes it's just better to have 2. You can have one that's handling the links and one that's handling chatting with people. You can have people engage. One of the interesting things we have found is that people really do love to engage the chat during the worship service. And some people are like, well, you don't talk during church. Well, I also don't sit on the couch and drink coffee and wear my pajamas most Sundays if I'm in the physical space. But that's how I go to church right now. And it really, we are finding community building because you're not having those in the hallway conversations, by the bathroom conversations, at the coffee pot conversations, that the chat is where a lot of that can actually happen, especially like during music and that sort of thing. So asking, where's everyone participating from? Or during the prayers of the people, inviting people to share their prayer requests with you in the chat, in the comments. Again, adding links for online giving and event registrations. You'd be surprised how many people will give online if they have a link to do it. So if you are figuring that out, that's a great thing to add, even $5, $10. People love to give to what they're enjoying. If your church offers birthdays and anniversary prayers, even if the service is recorded, ask for people to put their names or their dates, like married 46 years, or my birthday's on the 22nd. And then assure them that they'll be added to the prayers for the week, right? So even though, and say, oh, we're going to pray for you this week, or add the actual birthday prayer or anniversary prayer in the text of the comments for them. So lots of ways that you can really engage with the people who are showing up. You can also gather the names of everyone who's attended in a spreadsheet. You know, you can look and see who is at your service, and you can gather that. And you can contact them later. There's a way within Facebook you can copy and paste, and you can copy people's names, and it takes you to their profiles, which means you can then message them. Now they have a choice whether or not they accept your message or read your message, but you can contact people and send them follow-up messages and just say, thanks for being with us. It was really great to have you. If you have any other questions, this is how you can reach out to us. Again, low-hanging fruit, low commitment, like you're not, going to stress people out and make them feel put on the spot by doing things this way, but it makes them feel welcome, and they feel like they've been seen, right? And they feel like they belong. The ministry of the digital greeter is to offer folks who feel as if they're in the wilderness opportunities for connection and community. And we can't always choose if they take us up on them, but we can choose to offer them. So here's an example of why I think digital greeters and invitations and making the ask are so important. So, I live here on the farm, and we have miniature everything. So we have miniature goats, and we have miniature chickens, and we have a miniature pig, which really means he's just like 200 pounds instead of 2,000 million pounds. And we also have a miniature orchard, which means we have 3 fruit trees. And so, but let's say you guys came down from Kansas, and you floated the river, and you came down to see us. And you showed up here at the farm, and you came in the house, and I was just pulling out this peach pie, like out of the oven. I was just pulling it out. And you went and you did your bio break, right? You went to the bathroom, whatever, and you came back, and I've cut a big slab of this pie. And I say, hey, have a seat. Can I get you some coffee and tea? And I get you what you need to drink. And I sit down, and I put that big piece of pie in front of myself, and I start eating the pie. And it's so good. And I'm making like those moaning noises that you make when you eat, something really good. And you're like, that's so good. And you're looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and I start to think, oh, maybe they want a piece of pie. And I think, no. If they wanted pie, they'd ask me for some, because it's obviously right here. And I don't want to offend them by offering them pie because maybe they are gluten and, sensitive. And I don't want them to think I'm being rude by like offering them gluten. Or, maybe they don't like peaches. Maybe they're an apple pie person and I don't want to be a peach pie pusher. So I'm just not going to offer them like this pie. Now, if they really wanted pie, they'd ask for it. No, that is not what would happen at all. I would say, would you like some pie? I just made some pie. And you might say one or two, three, there's different options. You might say, I'm gluten intolerant, but if you have any actual peaches left, like I would love to have a peach. I'd be like, yeah, sure, have a peach. Or you might say, I'm actually an apple pie person, but can I have a taste? Because it seems like you really love that and you worked really hard on it. And because I really like you, I'd be happy to taste your pie. I'd be like, yes, taste and see if this pie is for you. Or you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I've just been waiting for you to offer me pie, right? So somewhere on that continuum are the options. That's all digital greeters are doing. That's all invitation is. It's just pie. We're just like, this is the pie we like. And if you'd like to have some more pie, we know where you can get it. If you don't like this kind of pie, that's cool too. Like, no big deal. But this is something I love, and I didn't want to presume that you don't want any. I don't want to presume to know what you do and don't like or what you do and don't need. We make the assumption that people will ask us, that they will just come to church, that they will just show up, that they will just tell us everything without being asked. But that's not how it works, right? People want to be invited. So that is part of the digital greeter's job, is to ask those questions, to invite conversation, to follow up with people, to say thank you for being here. That, if you want more information, if you want more pie, here's where you can find it. So following up, definitely, if you haven't already, create a digital visitor form. Like those little things you have in the pews that welcome the newcomer that they can fill out. If you haven't made a digital version of this, make a digital version of this tomorrow. You can do it on Google Forms. It will take 10 minutes. Super easy. Find the admin person in your parish who geeks out on forms, have them help you. Probably the person that corrects your newsletters every week. Like, they'll be your best friend. Give them some task. They love to get things perfect. Create a visitor form. Make sure it has those questions: name, email, address, what ministries are you interested in, how'd you find us, all the things you would put on a regular one, because your greeters can link to that during the service and people can get connected, and then you have their information. So that's the first thing everyone should be doing. And I did use the should word because sometimes you just have to. Number 2, ask volunteers, not just clergy and staff, that's fine, but also ask volunteers to send follow-up emails, text, or Facebook messages to those who visited any of your digital gatherings. And in these communications, make sure to include the following: link to the visitors form, if that's not how you got their information. Links to upcoming events, just 1 or 2. Don't flood them with your next 6-month calendar, just a couple of things that you think they might be interested in. And then if you have any online groups, send them invitations to those. And even better, which is number 3, ask those group leaders to send the invitations. So if you are doing small groups, if you're doing online Bible studies, if you are doing EFM groups, if you are doing Beloved Community or Sacred Ground, and someone is interested in that, invite them into it. Ask them to be a part of it, and not just kind of a generic admin information thing that gets sent, but a personal invitation. Other ways that you can begin to care for the people who visit and engage with them. Another reason to gather all those names and any prayer requests that are put in the comments or the chats is so that we can actually pray for them, right? So gather those names each week and send those to groups that are in your church that are the praying groups. Do you have a DOK? Do you have a Brotherhood of St. Andrew? Do you just have a good old-fashioned prayer group? Right? Like, let's pray for these people who are showing up in our spaces. Even if we never see or talk to them again, it's one of the things that we can offer. It's part of belonging, is that we're caring for people, even in ways they never know. So let's pray for our people. Offer online inquirers classes and send specific invitations to those who visited. Even if you don't have, and again, it doesn't have to be clergy driven. If you're without clergy or you're a lot lay led, host those inquirers classes. You can answer those questions and help teach people about the Episcopal Church. There's tons of videos and things online now too, through Tri-Tank and through other organizations that you can share. You don't even have to do all the talking. Host viewing parties of resources such as How to Eucharist, which is, do you remember pop-up video from like the 90s? It's kind of like that. It's an instructed Eucharist that looks like pop-up video. So it's a whole instructed Eucharist film with little bubbles that pop up and explain all the different parts. And it's a whole service. And so it's free to use. All you have to do is give them your email. I think it's howtoeucharist.org. I'll find it and send it to Gar. And you can either watch the whole service, or it's broken up into 3 or 4 different sections, and have a 4-week class where you watch each section of this How to Eucharist and talk about it. Invite your people to that. Mail, old-fashioned mail is beautiful if you can get a hold of addresses. People love mail right now, and not form letters, but handwritten notes. Did you have a card ministry before? This is a great time to start a card ministry. Individual people can do it at home. You don't have to print things and stuff things in large quantities. One person, 3 or 4 or 5 people can take on this ministry and send cards to people. People love getting mail, especially children. Send all the children mail. Offer open office hours for ministry leaders and clergy. If you are going to run a new EFM class, right? Come and ask questions about EFM. You can do this as a Zoom, or you can do a live Facebook event on your church's page. We're going to answer questions about EFM. We're going to answer questions about stewardship, those sorts of things. Just anything that makes it accessible so that people can engage and have that cow experience of the live voices, right? Like that they can know that they're not just talking to a bot, that they are still engaging with real people. So belonging. We are going to dive into belonging in a minute. And I love this idea. God gives the desolate a home to live in. He leads out the prisoners to prosperity, but the rebellious live in a parched land. God gives the desolate a home to live in, and that's part of our job. What we're going to do now, because I've just brain dumped a ton of information on you, is we are going to go into our small groups for 15 minutes. And if you have new people, if everybody would just, if you're in a small group specifically with new people, if you would just kind of briefly reintroduce yourselves. And then also just talk about what's popping up for you. There's been a lot of information last week and then again this week. So what does it mean? You can talk about the technical aspects. So I'm going to type this in here. What is popping up for you? Because the chat should follow you to your small groups, but we'll also put this in the thing when we send you. What's popping up for you? Are you being a kind of, what's the Spirit working on you right now? Is it more the idea that people are lonely, that they're in the wilderness? Is it more kind of these technical aspects of having things like digital greeters? Is it the pie analogy? Where are you kind of being arrested right now? Because I think identifying that at this moment will help us through the remainder of our time together. as we talk about belonging, and then do some Q&A. So I'm going to have ask Gar to put you into your groups, and there you go.
So just remember, when you go into groups, you'll have to accept the room. So you'll have a little thing pop up on your screen, just accept that. And then you will be pulled back automatically. You can leave the room if you want to. You'll come back into the main group, but it will go, what you're looking at now will go away and you'll end up in the room. So Jerusalem, how long do you want them to be in groups?
Let's go to the
Congratulations on your successful Star Wars experience. Star Trek.
That's right, your Star Trek experience. Now, Gar, do you have a list of who was in what group? Is that how you did it?
I do. If you push on the breakout rooms, you should be able to see what I did.
See breakout rooms. Okay, so what I'm going to add, if you'll just pull that up, what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of report back from our groups, but you might not remember what number you're in, but you might remember somebody who is with you. So we're gonna do this on the fly. But what I would just love to hear is what came up. Like, you don't have to tell secrets. What happens in the small group can stay in the small group, but just general feelings or topics that came up. So in group 1, who was somebody in group 1?
So we had Clark, Les, John, Linda, Ryan, and David.
All right, so who's gonna be brave and go first? Just unmute and jump in there. Deep in. We're all gonna wait till somebody does.
I'll go.
Thanks.
Basically, we talked about how to do the technology part of this and how much of an adaptation that is for all of us to try to figure out how to do that and how to figure out what welcomes and invites everyone to participate in this thing that we're doing. So many of us, myself included, don't know all the ways in which we can use Facebook. And so there's struggling to do that a bit.
A Facebook-centric workshop might be helpful. Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. The other question that came up in our group is you were talking about being able to see who was part of us. Now, my understanding is the only way that we can see on Facebook who's actually attending are those people who like and comment to the service. But when I go back and view my services, I have far more people viewing the service for some period of time than I would ever see in the liked and commented area. Is that true? Is that right?
Yes, so you're gonna have more views. There's different levels of engagement, and I really do think Gar and I were actually talking about this. I really would love to get Jeremy Tackett to come and do a thing for y'all. He's our digital evangelist, and he knows all the tricks and where everything is hidden and how you access everything, and can tell you where you can find it. But yes, it's so, for instance, when we do even for the presiding bishop, we might only we can see that like 300, let's say we can see that 300 people are viewing at one time. But when we go back and look at the analytics, we can tell that 1,000 people at some point put eyeballs on it. They didn't stay for the whole time, but they at some point engaged. And then you can see comments, you can see clicks. There's all this data that you actually can mine if you know where it is. So, and as far as, you definitely only want to follow up with the people who commented for the most part, because they have offered that, right? They engage. So you don't want to just like blindly try to reply, but it is interesting to see that information and to see where people are joining from and that sort of thing. The other thing that came up is that the people who were your good greeters and ushers in person might not be your best digital greeters and ushers because it's a different skill set. You might have some really great 16-year-old digital greeters, or, there's just different, your introverts who are really great at a chat. who would never ever volunteer for that in person. So it may not be the same group.
Right, absolutely.
I see that John Nicholas has his hand raised. Go ahead, John. And let's see.
Okay. I was going to comment on that. Doing the videography down in Derby, if I watch the comment stream on the computer that's sending the stream to Facebook, I do get the names of people as they join. They may never say anything, but I do get those. So the person that's putting it on the Facebook needs to watch that. The other thing you can do, because I had to do it in the initially when I was using my iPhone to record, to stream the service from, is I would take my iPad and I would watch it on the iPad and I could see it there, bigger screen. But also because I'm on Facebook as a moderator, when I go on the Facebook page for the church, I'm going to get the same thing that I'm seeing from the device that's streaming it. Now I'm set up a little better and I'm streaming from my laptop, but I still watch the Facebook feed on my laptop because that tells me how much of a buffering we're getting and whether it's 5 seconds or initially we were sometimes having 2 minutes of buffering.
Yeah.
So just to comment on what you can see with that feed.
Thank you, John. All right, let's hear from group 2. Who was in group 2?
So that would be Andrew, Harriet, Mark, Mary, and Roland. Or Rolland.
The first thing we learned is that it's pronounced Rolland and not Roland. There was some excitement about just sort of the dump of like so many good ideas, but also a little anxiety about how to sort of do them all at the same time and where to kind of jump in and then a little discussion around sort of the finesse of, for some people it's all Facebook and for some people it's not, and for some people, for younger people, we had one of our Mary Donovan in our group does a lot of college ministry in Manhattan and Lawrence, and like the college students are kind of over Facebook, but she thought, handwritten notes are actually something that would be really appreciated there. So just kind of knowing your audience.
That's great. Yeah, knowing your audience is huge. Younger people, yeah, they're not on Facebook. Anybody almost under 30 isn't on Facebook. And they will watch on YouTube a lot more likely than they'll watch on Facebook if you need a social media platform to stream to. They're more likely to have YouTube accounts and subscribe to things on YouTube. For sure. Handwritten notes, again, sending mail, things, even like printed copies of the sermon. You don't even have to, even if you don't write your sermons, if you can go back and transcribe it or approximate it and send it, that can be a great thing. And TikTok and Instagram, yeah. The Episcopal Church has started using the Instagrams. I don't do it, but the IGTV, which is their video thing, and that's another thing Jeremy and Chris can talk about if we get them to come on. The younger folk will also do that, and TikToks might even be beyond us, but we have some people that can explain it. So. All right, group 3. I heard digital greeters was a hot topic in group 3 from Tom. What else in group 3?
And Barbara, Crystal, Karen, and Tom.
Well, it hadn't been a concept to any of us, and even to think about starting it was quite incredible. But to have someone kind of monitoring the YouTube chat, because we stream ours on on YouTube, and a number of other people were streaming on YouTube. That if you can, it may not show as much information on it as Facebook, but you can get, say welcome to everyone and ask them to, let us know if you're on or that sort of thing. And so I thought that was really great there. And YouTube, it's interesting you said about transcribing a sermon. YouTube has a will transcribe what you got basically, and you can actually bring that up and copy and paste it, and then make it available that way.
That's awesome.
Subtitles basically.
Both YouTube and Facebook will do closed captions while you're on. If you set it up, and you don't have to worry about it. But I know we have some people who are that have hearing issues, and that's been a godsend for them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have it translate though.
Yeah.
They say they can do it into Spanish, but it's not always nice what gets translated. The National Cathedral puts a disclaimer on their services because it's not always appropriate. It's not always PG what gets translated. Just FYI. All right, group 4.
That's Chris, Helen, Jennifer, Kelly, and Rex.
Wow, that was a lot of crickets. Go ahead, really.
Sure. So we talked about a couple different things. The digital greeter was an epiphany for most of us, or even a reminder of, oh, we make references to our coded newsletter that we don't send out. Some other topics like Facebook is hard because there's lots of resources for businesses, not so much if you're a nonprofit, the category we fall into. Let's see. The other thing that we discussed was getting used to the idea that, in a sense, we're doing tape delayed services. People coming in watching after the fact. So some of us just shared. We have people popping up from the Philippines, people we don't recognize. What does that mean? And that kind of led to a topic talking about this idea of about every 500 years, right, the church is due for a reformation, and maybe this is the digital reformation for us. And so then what do you do with those folks that are joining regularly from Illinois? And we, kind of the discussion we had was just welcome in as parishioners. We're the whole geographic thing, like, we're over it, right? If they're here and they're wanting to encounter Jesus with us, let's just do it and invite and welcome them in. Again, coming back to the digital greeter. Some other things we talked about is linking is hard, and trying to kind of figure that out. Like, I went just curiously to see what our online giving link was, and it is very long, full of numbers and weird hieroglyphs and things like that. And so thinking, how would we do that? And then I just threw out a beat. We're actually doing this under discussion at Trinity. As nonprofits, we're all eligible for free Google G Suite accounts. You just have to send in some documentation of your charity status, which makes linking get a lot easier. It also changes like the idea of even how you would run the church. And even the idea that with having these digital tools, 2 of us shared, right, the fact that we traveled for our career, and that at the time it was like there was no call-in number, there was no video, anything. And now we're good at that. Let's keep figuring that out. So those were kind of the dominant themes of our session.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I put a resource, bit.ly. There's lots of these out there. These are ways to shorten your links so that you can have easier links. We use these for the Episcopal Church as well. We have an account set up, not with bit.ly, I'm not sure, but a way to shorten. But one of the things that you said that was really interesting about people engaging from all around, and don't tell the bishops this. I'm glad your bishop's not on, because this is going to stress the bishops out. But what is happening is communities are forming in different geographical locations to where they're going to church. So for instance, I happen to know of a small group that is forming in Northern California, that they are all attending the National Cathedral as their worship and their church, and they feel like that's their church. And then they're having small group together in Northern California. right? And so what does that look like? Which diocese are they a part of? What's their giving look like? What's their interaction with their local church look like? And instead of just saying, no, we can't do that, like we have to be able to go, okay, let's work with this. Let's talk through this. Let's think through all the possibilities and what this means. So it is going to change things in ways that we're just now beginning to understand. And you might have a community in the Philippines of people who attend your church and they form their own spot. What does that mean, right? So being aware of that is huge, and thinking through that and what that's going to mean for communication between dioceses and between congregations, and what does it look like to even share members, right? So I think a lot of that church, they're going to do a lot of their on the ground social justice work with their diocese, with a local parish, but they're going to do a lot of their formation, right, with the National Cathedral. Anyway, so it's just a whole new world. So thanks for bringing that up, Chris. All right, what group are we on? Maybe 5? Number 5?
So that's Denise, John, Mike, Sarah, and Ted.
Well, a couple of things that I remember, a couple of the churches talked about just the technology piece of not having a lot of people resources and trying to just get online, and the energy that goes with that, and even some of the frustration of doing all of this work and then you show up and Facebook doesn't work, or and then Sarah talked about one of the things she mentioned was just this whole idea of I'm using my own words on this, but how are people seeing one another in worship? When we were in physical space, there are lots of things that we do to connect with people. And what does that look like now that we're online? How do we help facilitate people seeing one another? And one of the things that she said that really kind of struck me is we talk about the liturgy as the work of the people. Now it feels more like it's the work of the professionals that the people are watching. Mm-hmm. And so the question that she really raised that intrigued me was just, in a sense, how do we make worship the work of the people again in this different way? And so that I find that very intriguing.
That's awesome. Thank you for bringing that up. That from the word go of this, from the moment the first church closed, the question has been, how do we not create consumers? Right? That's the challenge. We don't want, people were already kind of consuming church. Like, I want to go order this program and this letter. I like write to with a side of EFM, right? I want to supersize the altar guild, like, instead of being a part of it. This takes a little extra editing work, but it's not impossible. And again, this is a tool we can help share and teach how to use. But some of the places that are doing really beautiful work is having different people just record the parts of the service on Zoom. Like, you open your own Zoom private meeting, you record the reading of the epistle, and then it gets sliced, right? It gets patchworked with all the other pieces. And so you can still have all these other people participating. Also, right now, and I think we've already talked about this a little bit, this was a different meeting I had today, but authentic is better than slick. So I know the temptation is to get the better camera and to get the faster this and the clearer that and this piece of equipment and that piece of equipment, and I will geek out on equipment with anybody. But at the end of the day, it's better to be authentic and real. Think of those cows again, right? So the more real we can be, the more authentic we can be, even if that means we're messy, that's okay. And if you have a particularly smallish congregation, you can do a whole liturgy service on Zoom in these little squares, and everybody has a different part to do. Sitting on their couches, they can read the scripture, right? They can offer the prayers of the people. They can do all these different parts. And it's okay if it's not just like Hollywood perfect. There's actually a low threshold for that. People actually are turned off by that more often than not. Because they're like, it's the cow thing again. It's not real. That's not real. I'm just assuming something.
And I would just add to that some of the feedback that I've heard, because I think people have been really I think we've been becoming more agile and experimental, and people are willing to put up with a lot. I think the one thing that we found was if your sound is good, everything else is forgivable. Mm-hmm. If the sound isn't good, then that's hard. And so if people were wanting to focus on technology piece, it would be just if people can hear you,
yep,
they can connect.
Yep, that's awesome. Yeah, and just laughing about the mistakes and letting people show up as they are. It's awesome. All right, group 6. Does anybody know who was in group 6? A Yeti Blue microphone was a game changer. Y'all are putting great resources over here in the chat.
Anastasia, Melissa, Michael, Monty, and Steve.
All right. Who wants to jump in from that group?
Well, we went straight to food. No, we talked about greeters and online greeters and other things, and we kind of took the jump from, I think, from online to reality. So we tried to figure out and talked about ways of getting to people past the digital. So we did talk a lot about, food and how food interacts and how food makes us community after you are able to identify with everyone. Maybe others in the group might want to jump in too. I don't know.
Yeah, Anne, I see your hand. Anne Flynn.
It's just, well, the conversation before with Jeff or with Mr. Blakely, Father Blakely, and now with Steve, the sense of community. I have an example. Grace has a digital choir, and it looks like a game board, basically, with all of those little faces of the participants. And I feel so much more engaged in that, even though I'm not singing, than when I see the first lector come, the second lector come, the deacon comes for the gospel, then the preacher comes, and it's all stacked up. But this, you're part of community. So that's just a visual that I wanted to share.
Thank you. Yeah, I love getting to see everybody's faces as much as possible. Speaking of food, you can do food too on digital, and eventually we'll do food in person, right? Like that will happen again. But you can cook and eat together online. We have to get to where we think about being together on Zoom, just like being together in each other's living rooms. And if you would drink your cup of coffee or eat your cookie with me in your living room, then there's no reason why you can't do it on Zoom, especially for church things. These are not professional meetings. This is community. This is family. And so we've got to take that meeting aspect out of it and invite people in. And amazing things happen. I know churches that they do cooking shows together during their coffee hour, and everybody takes a turn being the cooking show host, and they pretend they're Julia Child or whatever, and they teach everybody how to make something. And this has led to a huge feeding ministry, actually, because this one church in northern Connecticut they had a cooking show for their coffee hour, and they were making all this food, and they were putting in their freezers, and they had freezers full of food. Well, their missioner happened to be talking to a social worker who was saying there were all these people that needed freezer meals in the community for various reasons. And then he was talking to this church, and they're like, we have all these freezers full of food because we're having so much fun cooking together over Zoom. And so now these churches are providing meals for these families that needed freezer meals, and they're having fun and community doing it, and it's blossomed. And now there's like 20 churches doing it. And they're just having an amazing time cooking together. And they go to church, but I'd put money on that. The real joy is the setting up their laptops and their tablets in their kitchens and getting and cooking. So again, like, pulling ourselves out of this is a meeting, has to be real slick, and putting ourselves into situations together where we're still doing life things really is what creates the belonging, the biggest kind of belonging. How many more groups do we have to get through? Because I know we're running out of time.
One more.
Oh, sweet. We're going to hit it.
We got Jean, Jennifer, Corinne, Kathy, and Tom.
We talked about screen fatigue, and a lot of us, most of our group was pretty much experiencing that screen fatigue, and how to try to overcome that. And one of the things that I said is one of the things that we've been doing at St. Andrew's Derby is we've been doing a full moon watch, where we've been getting together in the parking lot. Everybody brings their lawn chair, and we do a little evening prayer while we watch the moon rise. And then we are doing, we're going to be gathering on Monday to look at the Christmas star. And everybody's going to be bringing food for the food bank. And we're going to do, it's going to be a little cold, but it's a way for us to gather away from the screen and to bring our lawn chairs and hang out in the parking lot and watch that beautiful star. I can't wait to see it on Monday. And we also talked about engaging in chat on Facebook. And it sounded like a lot of in our group have already been organically doing the greeter that you suggested, but it just kind of happened organically. But to encourage that a little bit more, and getting people to talk during the parts of the service that where you can talk, like during peace or in the beginning or in the end. So yeah, some ideas that I think that we gathered from each other to try in our own churches.
Love that. That's awesome. Oh, look, now y'all like the chat. I encourage you to save this chat if you can. If you don't know how, you go over to the chat and you hit
I can send it out to you all.
Okay.
Like when it's recorded, it'll record the chat that's not private, and then I can send that out to you guys.
Perfect. Yeah. So go back and look through this because there's lots of great resources and ideas in this chat. The last thing that I would say is just play together. Find some ways to play together and have fun. Host trivia nights on Zoom, or play this or that, like I was talking in the beginning, or bingo night, or everyone do a tour of their Christmas tree. Get together, have a church Christmas party, have a progressive something, where you can, now you're going to see, and my Christmas tree's this big, or my Christmas tree's this big, or I have a Christmas bush, or whatever it is, right? Like, again, it's not to like be fancy, it's just to be invitational. But find ways to have fun, sit in different spots, encourage people to be I cook breakfast a lot during church, and I have it set up in my kitchen, and I sing and all the things while I'm scrambling eggs. It's just wonderful and lovely, and so much better than just sitting static. So use our bodies. We are sacramental people. We believe in outward invisible signs, so let's do outward invisible things with our bodies too, and encourage our people to do that. To do good old-fashioned Episcopal aerobics, right? The ups and the downs, and to engage our bodies and our senses during our church services. So we're coming on 8:30 and closing our time together. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. You are welcome to any time. I'm about to be on vacation, so I will tell you that. Most of the Episcopal Church big staff goes on vacation about mid-December, because you guys are all busy actually running the church, and you don't need us anymore, and you don't want us bothering you while you're actually trying to have Advent and Christmas. So we all go on vacation and take advantage of that. But if you have any questions about any of this, if you have ideas, if you want to brag about something you've learned how to do, if you want to get connected with other people doing this sort of work, if you want to sign up for the Evangelism newsletter, which is always full of resources to things like this, and other things that you can use, please send me an email, and I am happy to do whatever I can to support your ministry. I work for you, and I'm honored to work for you. It's a great joy, and just so grateful for this opportunity. So I'll turn it back to Gar and let him close us out.
So I'm really glad that all of you guys joined us. This is a sort of first effort. You guys know the bishop asked me to do some work for the diocese, and so I'm eager to do this. So my hope is to offer regular opportunities for people to do this. One of the nice things about the low threshold of Zoom is none of us had to travel across the diocese. We can get some resources, we can interact, it's free. And I mean, free in the sense of participation. And so what I'm going to suggest, I'll send an email out tomorrow. I'm going to suggest that the third Tuesday of January, we sort of circle back together and just see what we're doing and where we're at. And I want to encourage you, take one bite at a time. Don't try to eat everything at once, and just do a couple of things, just try a couple of things, do some stuff, experiment. If it doesn't work, whatever, try something else. And I think give yourself permission to be messy. And you don't have to be, you're not Hollywood. We've tried all kinds of stuff. I've had services stop. I've had, lectors accidentally say words they didn't mean to say in the services, on a recorded video, and we don't catch it because we don't listen to everything, Kelly and I have forgotten that we've turned the recording on when we were doing a live cast and didn't know it. And we're kind of chatting, and, kids are walking back. And then every time when we started live stream, our kids would go to the bathroom at the bathroom that was right by the computer. We have 3 bathrooms in our houses, but they would always come as soon as we turned the live stream on. And so you'd hear the toilet, so there's all kinds of stuff you can do. The other thing is we're going to start some learning labs. So I'm going to get some resources from Jerusalem and see if there's some other people we can connect with. It sounds like there's some need to do some work around Facebook and Instagram and just learning how to use those things. And so we'll try to have some learning labs where we'll have somebody come in who's an expert, and we'll have a conversation about how to do it. And then that might be sort of a technical thing, practical, and then we'll look at some other resources. So just look for some information about that. We'll try to have some regular offerings that, again, are low threshold, so we can continue to participate. But that's what the bishops asked me to do, and so I'm kind of eager about that. So I'm going to send a little note out tomorrow. I'll include everybody's emails on it so you guys can connect with each other. And also there'll be a small little survey just to fill out, just some information for me to gather from you about how this worked for you and what you thought. And then we'll kind of go building from that. When I get time, I'm going to set up a Facebook page or a little Facebook group that'll be a private group for people in the diocese that are interested in working on this, so we can continue to have some conversations with each other. That's pretty effective, and we can, at least people might have ideas or resources or have questions for each other, because we can all figure this out together. We don't have to be individual experts. So thanks everybody for joining us in this first effort. Jerusalem, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Arkansas. Or as we like to say in Southeast Kansas, Arkansas. So just y'all screwed up the name of the river down there. It's the Arkansas River. And it's Arkansas City, and you go down there and you get this, it's 2 syllables. Or no, there's 3 syllables, I guess. Arkansas, yeah. I can't count, so just kidding. So I'm wondering if we've got, let's see, Anne Flynn, you want to send us out in a word of prayer?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, gracious God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks that we have found the energy after a long day to be able to gather together and hear about opportunities for ministry and hear about how we can reach out to one another in this difficult time. And we give you thanks for that. We give you thanks for the resources and the willingness to try. And we ask you, Lord, to direct us and send us out to do the work you have given us to do with gladness and singleness of heart. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, y'all. So look for an email tomorrow, and I'll send the video out. You can share it with whoever you want to. And then look for some, I'll get a group set up and look for some invitations to that. I'll need you to be intentional about trying to connect to that if you're interested, because I don't know that I'm friends with all of you on Facebook. So I'm happy to be friends, by the way. I just don't know that I am. So good night, y'all. Thanks, Jerusalem.
Good night. Merry Christmas.
I'll send you an email tomorrow, Jerusalem.
Okay. Thanks, God. Bye.